Welcome to the ethics class. Today is lesson number 5. We're past the halfway mark. This lesson covers pages 104 and 105 of the text. There are 3 topics discussed in the 3 chapters, 13, 14, and 15. The first topic is the independence rules under the SEC through the PCAOB. Recall that the PCAOB is the rulemaking agency that was set up by the SEC for the specific purpose of making the rules. The text points out that these rules are similar to those of the AICPA. This should come as no surprise now. The first of 2 sections in this chapter is titled Cooling Off Period. It covers the SEC rules for a member of an audit team who wants to go to work for the client agency. Hey, we audited your books, give me a job, I'd like to make a lot of money too. There is a 1-year cooling off or waiting period before this can be done so that there's no undue influence and so that independence is not affected. This section also covers the issue of audit team rotation. Lead partners and review partners must take a 5-year leave from the client following a 5-year active service to the client. So you can do audits for 5 years, and then you got to turn it over to somebody else in the firm. Other partners must take a 2-year timeout after up to 7 years, even though they're not involved with the client. Okay. Or no, even though they are involved with the client. Sorry, these are partners who are not audit team leaders. Moving on, the rotation rules may be suspended for smaller firms, and small means fewer than 10 partners and or fewer than 5 clients. The second of the 2 topics is called pre-approval. The audit firm must have written approval from the client's audit committee before they can perform services. This includes tax planning and tax preparation services. If the extra services amount to a small amount, less than 5% of the audit contract, pre-approval is not required. However, the firm may not perform tax services under any circumstances for corporate officers of their client companies, or services that are held confidential, or services that may be termed tax aggressive. So anything that has the least odor about it is off limits, ethically speaking, for the audit team. Not that it isn't done, but it shouldn't be. Chapter 14 comes next. Very brief, 1 line. It notes that Government Accountability Office, the GAO, and the Department of Labor, the DOL, follow independence rules very similar to those of the AICPA. Surprise, not really. Chapter 15 covers international standards of independence through the IFAC. Rules are very similar to the American side of things, IFAC being the world governing body. However, independence, 2 things. Independence can be impaired under the world rules when fees generated by a client represent a big part of the firm's total revenue. So if you have a single client that comprises, say, 40, 50, 60% of your total revenue, that could be considered an impairment of independence. And number 2, independence can be impaired when a firm obtains an assurance client at a significantly lower fee level than charged by the predecessor agency. In other words, they're trying to discourage price competition here and underbidding. There may be some sort of favorable relationship going on that gets the client that lower price. I feel that this is a most unlikely circumstance and probably shouldn't be in the rules, but there it is for you. Hope it makes some people happy. Lesson 5 itself As for learning objectives, they don't necessarily correlate well with the lesson, but here they are: understanding confidential information, explaining the obligation to investigate bodies, assessing the potential risk regarding confidentiality in tax matters, and identifying responsibilities to clients and colleagues. And in a general sense, this is a part of that discussion. The readings we talked about, the lesson activities, there are 4 discussion questions for this lesson. Number 1, discuss the SEC rules. Those you'll have to Google because the book doesn't give you a complete listing anywhere of SEC rules. Discuss the role of the Government Accountability Office, GAO. What do they do? We already know that they're treated very much as all the other rule makers, or they follow similar rules, but what is their basic purpose? That would be sufficient. Number 3, discuss the IFAC. And again, just the basic organization. You don't have to go into a lot of detail for me there. Just who are they, what do they do, how are they empowered? And that would be for any kind of an agency, by the way. Who are they, what do they do, where does their power come from? That would be the relevant information for any government body. And finally, number 4, discuss ownership of working papers. Who owns the working papers? We talked about that in lesson 1. There are some ethical issues here, but essentially working papers are owned by the agency that generates them, that is the accountant. They're to be shared not lightly, only under court order is a typical reservation. Okay, that should conclude this lesson. I look forward to discussing further lessons with you next week.